Good day! Today we will tackle another lesson from the course, the teacher, and the school curriculum. So our lesson for today will cover curriculum planning, curriculum design, and organization. But before discussing that, let us first know our objective. So at the end of the discussion, you will be able to demonstrate knowledge of curriculum planning, design, and organization. Second, you will be able to prepare the developmental sequence instructional components with well-aligned learning outcomes and competencies based on curriculum requirements. And lastly, you will be able to highlight the importance of planning, designing, and organizing in the implementation, evaluation, and improvement of curriculum. So for our discussion for this lesson, we will divide our discussion into two sessions. So for our discussion for today, we will tackle about curriculum planning that covers the topic of steps in curriculum planning and what are the models of curriculum planning. For our second session, we will tackle about the curriculum design and organization that will cover the types of curriculum design and the elements of designing. So, for our discussion, let us first define what is curriculum. So, according to Stern's 2020, curriculum is the sum total of skills and concepts that students learn explicitly as well as implicitly. Losing track of the big picture of a curriculum plan is totally understandable. But at the same time, having an overarching plan is an important way to make sure you don't lose track of what matters most in a particular unit of study. So across the world, the term curriculum is used in numerous different ways. So according to Stearns, curriculum refers to the lessons and the academic content. It provides an outline of what should be taught to the students. Next, we have another definition from the Education Reform 2015. According to them, curriculum typically refers to the knowledge and skills students are expected to learn, which includes the learning standards or learning objectives they are expected to meet, the units and lessons that teachers teach, the assignments and projects given to students, the books, materials, videos, presentations, and readings used in a course, and the tests, assessments, and other methods used to evaluate student learning. So similarly, education reform defined curriculum as a set of courses that are systematically designed for a particular level or program. So it includes the learning objectives, units and lessons, the assignments, projects, materials, presentations, and assessments used for evaluating the students. Now, upon defining what is curriculum, let us now move on what is curriculum planning. So, curriculum planning is a complex activity involving the interplay of ideas from the curriculum field and other related disciplines. So, it is a complex activity that entails ideas from the curriculum field and other disciplines. So, curricularists and other educational specialists plays a vital role in performing decisions on the field of curriculum. Another, curriculum planning is ultimately concerned with the experiences of learners. However, the ultimate purpose of curriculum planning is to focus on providing better learning experiences for students. Another is, in any teaching or learning situation, however, the concern is not only with what students ought to learn, but also with how they are going to learn it. So in teaching learning process, it is not only focused on the content, but also consider how the students can learn it and eventually apply what they have learned inside the school. Next, curriculum planning involves decisions about both content and process and a variety of issues and topics. So learning must involve in curriculum planning, learning must involve the application of what has been learned. So curriculum should entail relevant content and the process how can the topic or lesson can be learned. So the relationship between the content and the process provokes the need to recognize curriculum and instruction as interdependent concepts in the process of curriculum planning. Thus, curriculum planning involves many issues and topics that can be utilized in curriculum planning. So there are many specific issues and topics that may be subject to curriculum planning, and it might include identifying curriculum approaches that might be used, carrying out a program, evaluating it, or deciding about the need for new programs, etc. So it can be the curriculum approaches, existing programs, a new program, etc. So lastly, curriculum planning involves many groups of people and levels of operation, and it is a continuous process. So nowadays, curriculum planning is not only for few scholars, but rather emphasizes the role of teamwork that involves many groups of people. So moreover, as we discuss some of the ideas and or concepts of curriculum planning, we can infer that it is a continuous process that involves making decisions about, first, the purposes of learning, next, how that purpose might be carried out through teaching learning situations, and lastly, whether the purpose identified and the means selected are both appropriate and effective. And that is according to Indira Gandhi National Open University, and that is curriculum planning. Now let us move on. So let us dig deeper on what is curriculum planning, no? From the IGI Global 2020, curriculum planning is the process of structuring academic experiences using expertise knowledge of the teacher. So it is the activity which teachers get involved in before the actual implementation. So furthermore, IGI Global also attempted to define curriculum planning as a process of building academic experiences by recognizing the expertise of the teachers in partaking the implementation of the curriculum. So similarly, we have also the definition of Simon Fraser University in curriculum planning. So according to them, it is a complex process where faculty define intended learning outcomes, assessments, content, and pedagogic requirements necessary for student success across an entire curriculum. Likewise, Simon Fraser University specifically defined curriculum as a complex process where the academe structure intended learning outcomes, assessments, content, and pedagogic requirements in order to meet the needs of the students. Let us now move on. What are the steps in curriculum planning? As what have been stated in my presentation, we have three major steps in curriculum planning, and these are to identify the issue, the problem, or the need. Next, we have to form the curriculum development team, and lastly is to conduct needs assessment and analysis. So in identifying the issue, the problem, or the need, this is the first step in curriculum planning. We all know that the planning phase plays an essential role in all of the curriculum development. So these are the three major steps. So for identifying the issue, the problem, or the need, so this section explores some of the questions that need to be addressed to define the issue and to develop a statement that will guide the selection of the members of a curriculum development team. So in curriculum development, the concern about a major issue or a problem will be the focus. So this step aims to recognize what are the questions or the needs that need to be addressed to define the issue that will guide the selection of curriculum development team. So thus, the identified issue, problem, or need will serve as a guide in identifying the scope or what will be included in the curriculum content. Next, we have to form the curriculum development team. In here, topics covered in this section include first, the roles and functions of team members. We also have the process for selecting members of the curriculum development team, and lastly, the principles of collaboration and teamwork. So, as the nature and scope of the problem are identified, the members of the curriculum development team can now be selected. So, this step entails the identification of the roles and functions of each member, the process of selecting the members, and lastly, the principles of teamwork and collaboration. So, the main aim in this section is to obtain expertise in various areas included in the curriculum content among the curriculum development team. So lastly, we have the last step in curriculum planning, which is to conduct the needs assessment and analysis. So this step is a complex process. This is a complex process indeed. So in here, there are two phases that needs to be considered. First is the procedures for conducting a needs assessment. So a number of techniques are aimed toward learning what is needed and by whom relative to identified issue. So conducting a needs and assessment, so it covers the techniques that aim to recognize what is needed in order for the students to learn effectively and by whom it is related. So these techniques entail the CAP, the knowledge, the attitude, and practice. Next, we have the survey that will focus on groups. And lastly, we have environmental scanning, in which learning takes place. Next, we also have this the second part, which is to conduct the needs, which aims to describe the techniques on how to use the data and the results of the information gathered. So the techniques on how to use the data gathered according to ELSA with 2020, this may include first the identification of the gaps between the knowledge and the practice. We also have to consider the trends emerging from the data. We also have to consider the process in prioritizing the needs. And lastly, the identification of the characteristics of the target audience or the learners. So upon identifying the steps in curriculum planning, let us now move on to the two major models of curriculum planning, and we have here the technical models which entails 6 major models. First is the Tyler model. Next, we have the Taba model, the Saylor and Alexander model, the Goodland model, and the Hankins model, and lastly the Miller and Seller model. And those are the technical models. We also have the non-technical models. We have Open Classroom model, Weinstein and Fantini model, and lastly we have interpersonal model. So for the technical models, so before discussing each model, let us define first what is the technical models in curriculum planning. So those in technical models, those who advocate the technical models look at curriculum planning as a plan for structuring the environment to coordinate in an orderly manner the elements of time, space, material, equipment, and personnel. So basically, technical models of curriculum views curriculum planning as a means of mapping out curricula to optimize students' learning. So it allows us to understand curriculum from a holistic viewpoint. So to explain it further, let us discuss the following model. So first, we have the Tyler model. So Ralph Tyler argues that those who are involved in curriculum inquiry should try to define the purposes of education, the educational experiences related to the purposes, the organization of experiences, evaluation of the purposes. So I know that some of you are already familiar with Tyler's model. So according to Tyler, curriculum planners should aim to define these 4 important factors in curriculum planning. So I have here a diagrammatic representation of his model. So They can, according to the Tyler's model, curricularists or the curriculum planners can gather the data or identify the purpose from three sources, which is the society, the society that covers the life outside the school. We also have the subject matter and the students or the learners. So from general purposes, we need to organize it into precise instructional objectives. So in the process of translating it, the basis of educational philosophies and psychology of learning are crucial. So now that we have the precise objectives, the task of selecting learning experiences, including the activities that best suits the objectives, So the last principle in Tyler's model, as you can see, is the evaluation. So it deals with evaluating the effectiveness of the curriculum plans and actions. So this will state if we have achieved the intended goals or not. So from the society, from the data gathering that comes from the society, we have the sources, we have the purposes, and lastly, we have the evaluation. So then the next technical model in curriculum planning is the Taba Model. So the main proponent of this model is Hilda Taba. So Hilda Taba's grassroots model is a reaction to how Tyler's model was put to use. She further advocates that teachers need to take an inductive approach to curriculum development, so starting with specifics and building to a general design, as opposed to the traditional deductive approach starting with the general design and working toward the specific. So Taba's grassroots model modified Tyler's model. So for her, teachers plays a vital role in developing the curriculum. So the use of inductive approach start with the specifics to a general design of curriculum, and it was asserted by Hilda Taba. So aside from that, Hilda Taba posited 7 major steps in which teachers could have a major participation. So first is the diagnosis of needs in curriculum planning. So in this, the teachers start the process by identifying the needs of the students for whom the curriculum is to be planned. So in this case, teachers should critically identify the needs of the students. Next, we have the formulation of objectives. So after the identification of the needs that require attention, the teacher specifies objectives to be accomplished. So after the diagnosis of needs, then the teacher specifically define what are the specific target objectives to be accomplished in a particular subject or course. Third, we have the selection of content. So in here, the objectives are selected. The objectives selected should suggest the subject matter to unit a lesson. So, from the specified learning objectives, teachers now should select the content according to the objectives and validity and significance of the content. Next, we have the organization of content. Organization of content depends on the cognitive maturity of the learners, their academic achievement, and interest area. So after selecting the content, its sequence are needed in order to execute the curriculum well. So thus, the organization of content depends and differs on the level of the learners, their academic achievement, and their interest. Next, we have the selection of learning activities. So from the name itself, it depends on the content selected and its sequence. We should introduce appropriate instructional methodologies that will help the students involve themselves with its content. So from the selected content, teachers should employ appropriate instructional methodologies that will help the students to learn effectively by engaging themselves with the content. Sixth, we have the organization of the learning activities. Each activity is prerequisite to those that follow. So this provides the students with the challenge without going beyond what the students are capable of. So similar with the content, the organization of activities to be done should be organized to allow continuity of learning. So the activities should be aligned with the content and learning objectives. So this will allow the students to be challenged on what they are capable of doing. Lastly, in Taba's model is the evaluation. So the purpose of evaluation is to determine how much of the objectives could be achieved. The evaluation procedures need to be considered by the students and the teachers. So evaluation is the last step. So it deals with the evaluation of how much of the objectives could be achieved. Hence, this is considered by both students and teachers. Now, aside from the Tyler's and Taba model, let us now move on to the third technical model, which is the Saylor and Alexander model. So it is proposed by Goodland Saylor and William Alexander. So they have presented a systematic approach to curriculum development that has 4 distinct stages with a feedback loop. So this model involves 4 distinct stages with a feedback loop. So this was shown in the figure reflected in my presentation. So these suggested stages involved in curriculum planning that entails first the goal setting, next is the curriculum design, we also have the curriculum implementation, and lastly the curriculum evaluation. So for the goal setting, we have in goal setting, there are 4 major curriculum domains according to Saylor and Alexander that should receive attention. These are the personal development, human relations, continued learning skills, and specialization. So in this stage, there are 4 major curriculum domains that should be prioritized. In those are the personal development, human relations, continued learning skills, and specialization. So in goal setting, each of the curriculum domain should be emphasized. Next, we have the curriculum design. So here we have to take a decision on the content. So its organization and appropriate learning opportunities for the content selected. So at this stage, curriculum designers or planners will make decisions on the content, its organizations, and appropriate learning opportunities for the content. Furthermore, decisions about the academic disciplines, the learner needs, or the needs of the society were also put into consideration. Next, we have the curriculum implementation. So once we design the curriculum and develop it for implementation, now we should consider the teachers. They select various methods and materials that will suit their learners. So for the curriculum implementation, so once the process of designing the curriculum and developing it for the implementation, this is the decisions about the instruction was done by teachers. So the selection of various methods and materials that best suits the learners are crucial. Lastly, we have the curriculum evaluation. So at this stage, the curriculum planners and teachers choose from the available evaluation techniques those that will furnish an accurate picture of the value and success of the curriculum and its delivery. So this is the final stage in the model. So the curriculum planners and teachers select from the various evaluation techniques that accurately picture or assess the success of the curriculum and its delivery. So the evaluation should focus on the curriculum plan, the quality of the instruction, and the learning behaviors of the students. So from the evaluation, curriculum planners and teachers can determine if the program can be retained, can be modified, or can be discarded. So it is where the essence of the feedback loop in their model will take place. Now, we have the fourth model, which is the Goodland Model. So in this model of John Goodland, all educational aims are drawn from the analysis of the values of the existing culture. So these educational aims are translated into educational objectives stated in behavioral terms. So according to this model, curriculum planners deduce specific educational objectives from the general educational objectives identified and the learning opportunities suggested. So basically, this model highlights that the objectives identified depict learning opportunities. So from the general educational objectives, curriculum planners work on specific educational objectives. So in here, the specific objectives will help them to provide specific learning opportunities for the students. Next, the next technical model we have here is the Hankins model. So in this model, Francis Hankins has the following 7 major stages. So he proposed 7 major stages on curriculum planning, which is the curriculum conceptualization and legitimization. We have second, we have the diagnosis. Third, the content selection. Fourth, the experience selection. Fifth, implementation. Sixth, evaluation. And seventh is the maintenance. So I have here a diagrammatic representation of this model that is reflected in this presentation. So upon seeing this model, as you will observe, except in Goodland's model that we discussed a while ago, the rest of the models don't have the feedback and the adjustment loop. However, the only difference of this model from Goodland's model is that the feedback and adjustment loop has gained its importance. So unlike in Goodland's model, the loop is of a primitive nature. So Hankins' model allows the curriculum planners to continually adjust their decision making about curricular action depending on the situation. So it enables the process of curriculum decision making to be spiral rather than to be linear. So, and furthermore, and the other different feature of this model, if you can observe, is the inclusion of the conceptualization and legitimization of curriculum. So the first stage of the model, this first stage of the model resolves the problem. So it ensures that at the beginning of the stages, one should be able to clearly point out one's philosophical orientation. So if you are going to observe, majority of the models consider the curriculum evaluation as their final stage. However, in this model, it has the unique stage after curriculum evaluation. It is the curriculum maintenance stage. So this stage suggests a variety of ways in managing the curriculum system and support systems that are necessary for the continuation of the program. So hence, the activities at the rest of the stages are enormously similar with the stages of other models. So last, for the technical models, we have the Miller and Seller model. So they introduce the notion that the various models of curriculum development exhibit at least the following. So this model paved its way and recognizes the 3 essential orientations towards the purpose of curriculum. So first, we have the orientation of transmission position. So when we say the orientation of transmission position, meaning the curriculum can stress out that the education should impart facts, skills, and values to students. So the mastery of competencies and carrying on the culture were greatly highlighted. Next, we have the orientation of transaction position. So in here, it views education as a dialogic process between the students and curriculum. So an individual, in other words, the learners, should be treated or recognized as a rational being and capable of intelligent action. So lastly, we also have the orientation of transformation position. So in here, the purpose of the curriculum centers on personal and social changes. So for you to further understand this model, I have here a diagrammatic representation of the Miller and Seller model. So the figure presented has shown all the features of the technical model of curriculum planning, as you can observe. First, we have the orientation stage. So this phase deals with considering one's philosophical orientation and one's view of society. Next, we have the aims. So from the orientation, we can now determine the aims, the goals, and the objectives to be addressed. From the aims, we also have the teaching models. So once the objectives and the aims are defined, now we have the various teaching methods. Various teaching methods are highlighted to provide better learning opportunities for students. Next, we also have the next phase is the implementation plan. So it deals with the incorporation of the curriculum into the teacher's repertoire of behavior. Lastly, we have the evaluation. So as we have discussed in the previous technical models, evaluation entails the assessment of the effectiveness of the curriculum. So for a recap, in technical models, we have six major models of curriculum planning. We have the Tyler model, the Taba model, the Saylor and Alexander model, the Goodland model, the Hankins model, and the Miller and Seller model. Now, let us now take up the non-technical models. But first, let us define what are the non-technical models in curriculum planning. So these models take up issues with some of the key assumptions underlying the technical approach and questioning some of the consequences that result from utilizing this approach to curriculum development. So non-technical models, these are the models that are not suggested to be unsystematic, but rather it specifies issues with some of the assumptions from technical approaches and questioning some of its consequences to curriculum development. So now let us discuss the three major non-technical models. So first is the open classroom model. So it is based on an activity-based curriculum in which the activities are treated as ends in themselves. So the discussion about non-technical approach to curriculum development emerged during the early 1970s, known as the open classroom movement. So it is solely based on an activity-based curriculum. Next, it suggests that students learn by participating in tasks and by actively moving around the room and not by passively listening to the teachers. So in here, students are not just passively listening to the teachers while discussing, but rather they participate in various tasks and activities to learn effectively. Lastly, this model places great faith in students and encourages learner autonomy. Therefore, this model enables the students to learn independently and to develop learner autonomy. Next, we have the Weinstein and Fantini model. So this was proposed by Gerald Weinstein and Mario Fantini. So through this model, teachers can generate new content and techniques to assess the relevance of the existing curriculum, content, and techniques. So this model encourages teachers to form new content and techniques that will assess the curriculum along with its content and the other techniques. So it can be a way of connecting or linking sociological factors with cognition so that the learners can cope with these concerns. So further, this model asserted that there are two major steps in curriculum planning activity. First is identifying the learning group. So it gives importance to the learner to the learner concerns that determine the content and its organization. So it gives the curriculum some consistency. So the nature of content organization helps to sustain the motivation of the students, and it can be organized into three divisions. So according to Stainton and Fantini model, the nature of the content organization can be organized into three divisions. So first, the content gained from experiences, the content relating to the learner's feelings about his or her experiences, and lastly, the content that the student gets from the social environment in which he or she lives need to find a place in the curriculum. So the types of content can influence the types of skills that will be selected. Next, we have identifying the teaching procedures. So the necessary procedures are those that will address the learning styles of individuals and that will also have the greatest impact on their affective dimension. So the necessary teaching procedures can be employed by recognizing the student's learning style. So this can greatly impact student affective domains. So this will also help the learners to have better educational experiences. Lastly, for the non-technical models, we have the interpersonal model. So the proponent here is Carl Rogers. So Carl Rogers' model is used for exploring group experiences, which can be used for improving the attitudes, the behaviors, and personal relations of students, parents, community member, and so on. So through though Rogers is not a curriculum specialist, he developed a model for changing human behavior that can be used for curriculum development. So his model is often used on the exploration of group experiences in which people can examine themselves and the other people as well. It can be used not only among peers but also to affect relations between members of different status roles, such as curriculum committee consisting of board members, community members, the parents, administrators, teachers, and students. So in relation to this, members of the curriculum development team can learn to understand themselves better and to be flexible and willing to work for changes. So for a recap, the non-technical models consist of the open classroom model, the Weinstein and Fantini model, and the interpersonal model. And that ends our discussion for our first session about curriculum planning, curriculum designing, and organization. So for our next session, we will discuss or we will dig deeper on curriculum designing and organization. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something from me.